Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to our debate, The Climate is Changing, Are You? My name is Thomas Huddleston. I'm the Vice President of CafeBabel.com, the Brussels team. Just to give you a bit of information about who we are, CafeBabel.com is a European magazine online based on participatory journalism. Basically, a few years ago, there were a bunch of Erasmus students who went back to their home countries and were shocked at the low quality of European news. So they put together a network of young journalists, young translators, and you now have a regular magazine which is translated into 7 languages, English, French, Spanish, Catalan, Italian, German, and Polish, so that you can read an article about the latest play in Warsaw written by a Catalan, and you can read it in French. And here in Brussels, we organize monthly debates called the Manneken Babel Debates, here in Brussels cafes, where we try and bring together decision makers in Europe, in Belgium, with you for very open participatory debates. So we're looking forward for some hot debates on this hot topic. Again, my name is Thomas Huddleston.
Florence Lumet.
Yeah. And so, welcome. So the debate tonight is on The Climate is Changing, Are You? Basically, we see climate change, it's everywhere now. It's on the TV, it's in the newspapers, you even see it in fashion ads. So it seems like everyone's kind of waking up to the need for a kind of a global response. And many different actors are starting to take responsibility. But the question is, are our governments willing to take the necessary and very urgent steps to reduce greenhouse gas emissions? And more importantly, are we willing to change the way that we lead our lives, even radically? And as a larger question, can we make cutting our greenhouse gas emissions something hip and sexy, in the words of California Governor and former Terminator Arnold Schwarzenegger? So that will be the debate general topic for this evening.
Just to introduce a bit the speakers, we have on our left Mr. Jos Delbecq, who is Director of the European Commission in DG Environment, working specifically on climate change and air issues.
Good evening.
We have Mrs. Witherspoon in the middle, who comes straight from California to visit us tonight. She was the former executive officer of the California Air Resources Board, and we are very happy to have her with us tonight. On the very left, we have Mr. Matthias Duve, who is Director of the Climate Action Network at the European Office, on the left.
So, Florence, would you like to talk a bit about the format of the debate?
Yes. So, just to explain to you, the debate will be structured in 2 parts. The first part, which will focus on the EU versus US situation. So we'll have a comparison with 2 presentations. One presentation of 7 minutes from Mr. Delbecq, and 7 minutes presentation by Mrs. Witherspoon. And you will have, after each presentation, you will be able to ask as many questions as you wish for about 15 minutes after each presentation.
Now, so first to Ms. Witherspoon. Just as by way of background, according to our CafeBabel.com research team, Graziella, California is the 6th largest economy in the world and responsible for 25% of greenhouse gas emissions. Does that sound about right?
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right. And and also California is known for taking a great initiative on issues of climate change. So the question is, does California deserve its good reputation? And if so, what have been the key factors that have made California leading? Is it political will? Is it the charisma of the governor? Is it a history of working on environmental issues, or a history of having terrible air pollution? So what are those key factors? And then where do you think Europe might be able to learn from California's experience?
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm getting over a cold, so my voice might crack occasionally, but I'll try to speak as clearly as I can. California, since the 50s and 60s, has done strong environmental regulation out of self-interest. California has and still has the worst air pollution in the United States. And California is who figured out what causes ozone to form in the atmosphere, and that it's not just burning trash in the backyard, but a complex interaction of car emissions and other pollutants. And so California has led the United States all that time in environmental regulation, and then did the same for water, for toxics control, et cetera. So this is really a continuation of California's own self-interest leading it. We are immediately affected by climate change. We took national and international data and boiled it down to the California effects. And the most serious for us is a loss of our fresh water, which falls as snow in the northern Sierras. And so 75% of our fresh water is at risk at different warming estimates. We're also a large agricultural state. We supply 1/5 of the milk and cheese to the United States, and cows under stress make less milk when they get hot, and they might not even be able to live in California. Our wine industry, if you've ever had California wine, grape quality declines when the heat goes up. And we also grow apples and almonds, and they need cold hours to set on the tree without falling off. And so these and many other effects. Then as sea levels rise, we move water from the north to the south of our state through a system of aqueducts and rivers, and the salt water penetrates into the delta, destroying that ecosystem and also making our water salty. So we presented all these facts to our politicians so that they could understand it in direct terms. But really, the turning point, I think, for everyone in the United States was Al Gore's movie, turning what had been known for 30 years into common, simple language and pictures, and then making it imperative for people who called themselves environmental leaders to step out. So I'll stop there, and you can add to your question.
Well, to add to the question, I guess I would ask what kind of an impact California has had in the U.S., because I think I have a quote, which is Arnold Schwarzenegger was interviewed by the BBC, and he said, I won't try and do an Arnold Schwarzenegger impersonation, but you can imagine it's really easy with this quote. California is big, it's powerful, and what we do in California has unbelievable impact, and it has consequences. So do you think it has had consequences on how the federal level is looking at it, or on other action across different states? And do you think that it could have an action here in Europe? I know that the U.S. mission has been bringing you, you were in Helsinki, you were in Stavanger in Norway. Do you think that it can carry something here to Europe as well?
I do. California is the 10th largest economy in the world, and we like to think of ourselves almost as a nation more than a state. And business looks at California as a harbinger, an omen of what's going to come and affect them elsewhere in the country. But something you should understand about the United States is domestic policy is not set in Washington. It's defined in the states. And when enough states have acted, what is it at, 3.5 minutes? When enough states have acted and we have critical mass, we have a de facto national standard. And then Congress just turns that into the law. And we try to use that leverage. In the past, California, Texas, and New York joined together to change the truck standards in the U.S. because we controlled 30% of the market. And so once the three of us said this is what it's going to be, the truck companies had nowhere to go. They had to meet our standard, which became the national standard. The other thing that happens is that business doesn't like different regulations. You've heard that in the EU, 27 different countries, 27 different regulations. So they rushed to Washington and said, please, one standard. So we set all of that creative energy in motion, and then also we birth new industries. We think green technology is going to be a growth driver for us. Exports are 25% of our $1.5 trillion economy. And so that's the new growth sector for us. And we can teach Europe how to regulate, and they can teach us how to play well with others, because we don't do that in the United States very well, and even California doesn't do it very well. We just charge. And then if you follow us, that's okay, and if you don't, too bad. But that's not going to work for climate change.
Well,